and welcome to Craving Creativity Club. I'm Elena, an experienced artist and teacher, and this week I want to talk to you about how we might use inspiration from the natural world to explore pattern and texture. We're going to use a range of different materials to practice some of the shapes we can find in objects like cones, leaves, and seed heads. This is the 6th session of the Changing Seasons block of Craving Creativity Club. If you've missed any of the previous sessions and you want to watch them, or if you want to watch them again, you can find them on the playlist on my channel here. And don't forget to subscribe while you're there. I'll tell you more about Craving Creativity Club at the end of this video. But just before we begin, I just want to let you know that I want the club to be moulded by you and what you want to learn. So if you have ideas, requests, questions or feedback, please comment here and let me know. I respond to every comment and I want to hear from you. Now, let's explore some techniques. Let's begin by having a look at some of the resources that you might use for this type of exploration. This is where you will want to collect as many different drawing materials as you can. You might not have as much as I've got here. You might have different items from what I've got here. This is just a selection that I've pulled together. I'm going to show you some of the marks that these resources can create, and I suggest that you have a similar play with the drawing materials that you've got as well. So I'm going to start at this end. I've got basic pencil. It's just a 2B pencil. It doesn't do anything very exciting, just pencils. These are different kinds of graphite sticks. I've got this rather chunky one here. And these are quite nice because you can actually draw with the side of the stick as well as drawing with the tip of the stick. This is a water-soluble graphite stick, and I'll show you that when I put water over the top of it, it begins to blend more interestingly, which might give you some more ideas for how you might play with things like this. I've got my trusty Sharpie pen, both ends. And I also have a manga pen, which has a different kind of tip. I have charcoal pencils in black and sepia. So these are just compressed charcoal. There's another one there, darker black. And I also have charcoal sticks, willow charcoal, which of course are very smudgy. I've got drawing pencils, coloured drawing pencils. And of these, I've got just studio pencils, and then these are, again, water-soluble drawing pencils. So you see that nothing happens when I use that, go over that, but these begin to blend together with some water. I've got oil pastels in black and also white and a few colours. These ones are quite hard, they're more like crayons, they're not oil pastels, but they're quite nice to use. And then finally, I've got some ink and my ink pen. So I can make quite fine lines using this ink pen. And then I also have a bamboo stick to make different sorts of ink lines. You could use, if you've not got a bamboo stick, that's perfectly fine. You could use any old stick just to make marks. And it's something that artists have done for a long time, is just use any old random thing to make marks. Van Gogh, for example, is quite known for using whatever he can find to make marks. And as you can see, that this ink is extremely water soluble. So I can make some different marks with a brush as well. So that's my collection of materials. You do not by any means have to have the same as me, but do have a little play and see how some of your materials react together, how they react with water, whether you can smudge them, all those sorts of things. As well as having a little play with the materials that you've got to draw with, also take a moment to have a really good look at the objects that you've collected to reflect the season or the area around you. Obviously in the UK at the moment it's autumn, and so I have lots of dried out seed heads and fir cones, conkers, sycamore seeds, that sort of thing. But you might have other things depending on where in the world you are or what time of year it is where you are. Let's look at some of the shapes. I want to start with the allium, which is a plant that I love at all times of the year. I just love that star shape. We've got this, it's almost like a sparkler coming out of the end of its stem, all these different explosive seed heads. And in the summer when it's flowering, these are all covered in purple star-shaped flowers. Now each of those little flowers has become, we're just left with the sort of spikes that go underneath the flowers. These used to be like tiny leaves under the flowers, which are like little stars. And the seed heads themselves, these little black seeds sort of hidden away inside that little cluster of spikes. So each one is like a little star that's exploding out. And I just really love that idea. So that's the allium. And speaking of stars, I've got this as well. I can't remember what this is, but each of these is also like, these little dried up flowers are also like little stars exploding, little clusters as well. I really like that idea. Moving on to some of my other seed heads. Again, I don't actually know what this is. I think might be related to dock, maybe. Not sure. We've got these, again, little tiny clusters following along the stem, and each one kind of just curves over in a different direction, which is quite interesting also. And I'm always fascinated by dried up leaves, and the way that they kind of curl around is really interesting also. It's quite calligraphic, I think. More seed heads I have. This is, I want to say Scarlet Pimpernel or Red Campion. I'm not an expert. This is just my guesses. These seed heads are like little bags. You know those drawstring bags that you can get, just kind of, or little cups with a frilly top to them. And they seem to come in three, and that's quite interesting. And this is mallow seed heads, and you can see, hopefully you can see inside, there's these seeds like tiny pumpkins hiding inside the flowers. There's another one inside there. I've also got some lichen. At some point I'm going to have to find out how to pronounce that. And these lovely frilly shapes that kind of all interlock together are really interesting as well. And the way they sort of cluster along the stick is interesting. I have fir cones. So I've got different kinds of cones. I'm not sure which tree they're all from, but then they give different shapes. So the seeds would actually hide inside these little gaps. But we get these nice diamond shapes, or they're a bit like lips, pouty lips, kind of spiraling around. And you can see the spiral in this one as well, especially if you look at it from above. You can kind of see how the sort of stick bits spiral round and round. And the ends, again, they're kind of like this diamond shape. And when this is open because it is very dry, but when they feel damp, they close up and they look a lot more like these ones. And you get this sort of scale effect around the bottom of it. I've got, conkers. I like the concentric circles of conkers. These are quite dried out now, but they look like wood. well, they look like wood anyway, but the sort of circles and the swirls that you get in conkers are very interesting. What else have I got here? I've got some dried up hydrangea flowers. We've got this group of 4 petals that's interesting. And the berry. Again, we've got this sort of explosive sepals that come out from the top of the berry. That's where the flower would have been tucked inside there, and then the fruit has grown behind. And this berry's rather dried up now, a rose hip, I think it is. So we've got these interesting wrinkles, which are quite similar to the sort of squiggles of the lichen as well. I've got some fern here, and again, like the whatever plant it was before that I showed you, that's got the little seeds that follow along the stalk. The fern has these little tiny leaflets that follow along the stem. I quite like they're kind of almost symmetrical, except that they curve round as well, and that's quite interesting to me. So we've got some really interesting shapes to begin to explore. So I'm going to get out my sketchbook and show you how I might go about exploring some of these ideas. I've collected some of my favourite things from this little collection to start with, and let's see how far we get with this. So I've got my allium with its beautiful star-shaped explosions, and I'm going to begin with just some compressed charcoal, and we've got this interesting explosive idea. It's quite simple, really, just lots of little exploding pieces that also have extra little explosions on the end of them. I have another one of those here, I think. So I'm experimenting with the materials as well as the shapes by just kind of spreading that out a little bit. I think I'm going to switch to some pencil now for these. It's given me an idea for trying with the pen. And let's try just dotting. Just helping this ink spread. It's quite interesting the way that it's moving out. Didn't mean to put a spot in the middle, but it's kind of worked out okay. I'm all right with that. So let's try that with a bit of colour. I'm going to have a go with a nice warm brown of compressed charcoal. And I'm not worrying too much about overlapping here either. I'll use some ink. Okay, I'm going to switch to my bamboo pen. Put a splodge in the middle. So oil pastel will resist the water, so I'm quite interested to see what the effect of that is if I add some water in a similar way to before. Just encouraging it along through these gaps. We're getting this interesting explosion now, like a sun maybe. Quite like that idea for autumn, that we still have sun, but it's cooler and not so bright and warm as it is in the summer. And I'm going to have a think about these little stars from this now as well, that are more like they've kind of got a centre and they've kind of got more of a shape to the, they're more they're like petals rather than sticks. And this is water soluble pencil. means that I can soften it as well. So we're getting these interesting effects just from the idea of this star shape. Let's try with the bamboo pen with just a little splot. I quite like these petal shapes here, so I'm wondering if I can recreate that. Ooh. Beginning to look a lot more floral, which is maybe not quite what I'm looking for. Interesting, but not quite what I'm looking for. Let's try exploring some other things now. So I've moved on to the paper now, and I'm quite interested in these curly effects, particularly the curl of the leaf and the curl of these seed heads. We've got the curl of the leaves, that the fern leaflets as well. I quite like that. So let's have a go at making some curls. I'm going to use, I think I'll use the water soluble pencil because I'm also quite liking some of the effects when I'm adding water to my work. So we can have a curl to make it quite a lot bigger. And some of these curls come back the other way. Like this effect with the leaf, the way that it kind of comes around like this. I'm wondering if I can recreate that. So this is a 6B graphite stick. Let's see if I can. Oh, that is quite interesting. I'm not sure if you can see that because it's quite light. I might have to go over it with something else. Ah, the charcoal. It'll be much darker. Here we go. Let's try another one. I'll follow this. We get this really calligraphic sort of shape. It's interesting how it's actually beginning to look a bit like the lichen also, with those wiggly shapes that are there. Now I wonder if I can accentuate that a little bit. Let's stick with charcoal, but I'm going to move to compressed charcoal now. Just following that, following that line through the gap. So I'm kind of linking different shapes to each other with extra charcoal lines. I quite like how this one crosses. That's one of those pencil lines from earlier, so I think I should just follow that to add to that with some of that oil pastel again, which again I can use on its side. I'm not sure how it's going to go over the top of the charcoal, but we'll have a try, and we'll go in a different direction this time. Right, I'm going to go over the top of that with some pencil and follow some of these lines just along one edge. So I'm accentuating the edges of this just along one direction. Wonder what it looks like with a colour that stands out more. Let's try blue. Not very autumnal, but interesting. Again, just following along one edge. So getting this interesting kind of squiggle effect. I'm wondering now what might happen if I add some ink and then water as well. So I think the ink will just do some little swirls. while I'm drawing with this, I'm beginning to think about some of the little seed heads along here that follow the lines. So I'm wondering about adding dots to follow to represent those little seed heads. It's beginning to make me think about ferns unfolding in the spring and then kind of refolding themselves in the autumn. As they begin to disintegrate, they kind of curl up. Let's add to this some, I'm going to go green now, and we'll go with those that idea of the ferns. Can I get any little leaf shapes in as well? See, I'm not sure about that. I think that is a bit too obvious, too representational maybe. I don't know, I'll do some more and see. I think it's important not to reject an idea too quickly. To keep trying it in a few places, maybe with a few materials. Try a different thing. Chunky charcoal. That's more like a large version of those little dots. I think I prefer that. Sort of changing the size and the shape just a little bit, but keeping that kind of pattern. So we've got these little dot patterns and then we've got these larger line patterns. I think that's quite nice. Let's follow that line now. So when you're doing something like this, you might find that you don't actually like the finished work all that much. But there are ideas in there that you could use in a different way or somewhere else. In a later piece of work that you might actually prefer. And also, as I've said before, that this does not have to be the be all and end all to a piece of work. You don't like it, that's fine, keep it anyway. We've got other activities that we'll be doing at some point soon, which you might want to tear this up and use that in a different way. Okay, I'm going to pause there and just think about some things that I like in this. I like the little dots following these lines. I like the calligraphic lines, and I think it worked much better with the charcoal than it did with the oil pastel. I prefer the texture of the charcoal. I prefer how wide it is and how you get these much more calligraphic shapes with it. Not sure about these little swirls with the ink. I think I might actually try adding some water to them. Just encourage them to do something slightly different. Now that's quite interesting, going over the top of the oil pastel, and you see the texture of the oil pastel coming through. I do quite like that. So the idea of using the oil pastel might not be completely duff. To do like these kind of sinuous shapes that I'm making both with the brush and the charcoal as well. It's not that I don't like the swirls, it just needs the right material. Okay, let's try something a bit different. I mentioned before how I like the concentric circles of a conker. So we've got, they're not really circles, they're kind of blobs, concentric blobs of a conker. Both this sort of blob here that's surrounded by the brown of the nut, but also if you look really closely at the textures of conkers, especially when they are fresh out of the shell, you can see these sort of concentric circles like you get in the wood of a tree as well. So I'm going to have a go at something like that. And let's use, I'm using the oil pastel again, and just to do my initial blob. And I'm not worrying too much about it being circular because it's a blob. And let's try some different materials going around the edge of it. So you can just have pencil, sepia compressed charcoal. It's a bit boring like that. Looks a lot like the pencil, so I'm going to just smudge it around a bit. Okay, we've got these very thin lines. I think I want to switch to something a bit chunkier now. Let's try some of this graphite. Small piece of charcoal here. It's not huge. I quite like that thick and thin line that I'm getting with it. Might do another one of those. I think a bit more colour. We'll go back to the oil pastel. It's another thick and thin line. I'll have a Sharpie. And this is more compressed charcoal. I feel like this green is getting lost. There's some green oil pastel here. Let's try with the bamboo pen. So I've got a load of lines making concentric circles now, but I don't want to forget about my idea of both stars and things that are kind of coming off lines as well. So I'm going to use my bamboo pen to add some dots. Let's just go around here first. So I'm not actually attaching these dots to a line at the moment. I'm just adding them as the idea of maybe seeds within this collection of blobs, concentric blobs. I think we'll have some bigger ones where there are bigger gaps as well. I don't want to go all the way around there. I just want to do a few. Do similar here. Go over here as well. Now, I did also like those shapes that I made with the brush when I was exploring the star idea. So I think I'm actually going to have a go at making some of those shapes using this ink. Again, I like how the ink is affected by the by the oil pastel in a way that it isn't over the charcoal. Whoops. We get these textural lines that some go over and some go under. I do quite like that. And I think I'm actually going to add some stars to this. Ooh, which stars shall I choose? I think I'm going to go with the ink stars. Okay, I think that'll do. And then I want to add bits of water along the edges. And even where it's not really running all that much because the ink is drying and there's not a lot of it at the tip of a star. I quite like these effects in the charcoal as well. I think I might actually, whoops, go around the edge here as well. Use of some of these little blobs, places where the ink was a bit blobby. Okay, I think I'm done with that for now. So I'm going to let all of these dry and then we'll have a little review and look more closely at what I've achieved. It's the next day and I'm just going to talk you through what you might do next, having done all of these explorations, and where you might take them next. This is part of an exploration and experimentation stage in making art that can continue for quite a long time. Just exploring materials, exploring the subject that you've chosen and just seeing what you can do with it. If you want to see more of what I've done here, I did some more pictures, there's some more things in my sketchbook that I want to share. You can find it on the blog on the membership pages as well. So having a look at this is the first page I did, which, if you remember, I was looking at the allium stem and that sort of idea of explosions and stars. And I can see already I'm not really that keen on these ones that I've done with the compressed charcoal. They feel a bit kind of scruffy. I don't like the smudginess of them. I prefer this one, but I did like it better when it was wet. I don't like it so much when it's dried. What I do like is the way that the ink has blended into water, and these sort of beginning shapes of the they're almost like petals coming out that I've made with the paintbrush, and I've got these petal shapes here that have come out with the water soluble colour pencil there also. I'm not sure I like it so much here and here because it looks a little bit too much like a flower and not so much like a star or explosions, but it's okay. I think my favourite part of this page, is this one here. And I really like the texture that's created with the ink over the oil pastel. So the oil pastel is resisting the ink, and you get this interesting texture where the ink sort of settles into the gaps left behind by the texture of the paper when you put the oil pastel on. And although it's quite messy, I quite like it. It's texturally messy rather than just scruffy. And what I started doing as I began thinking about this is I actually made some notes in my sketchbook. Now, you could make notes directly onto your pictures. It's totally up to you how you do this. I've chosen in this situation to just make a couple of lists, things that I like and things that I don't like in my sketchbook. So I've included that I like the explosive stars and I like it when the tips are also exploding. But I don't like the charcoal smudges on the explosions. I like my flower petal brush marks. I like ink over oil pastel as well. Okay, so the next picture I did was this swirly one. And I began with the sort of calligraphic charcoal lines, and I really, really like those. I did not like it so much with the oil pastel. I think it just doesn't look as calligraphic. I don't like the texture so much. It just looks like swirls, and not so full of movement. So although you can't really see those lines so much anymore, I've remembered that they're there, and I know that I like that. Again, I do like the texture, like here, where the watercolour, sorry, not the watercolour, the ink and the oil pastel have interacted together. I do really like that. I'm not so keen on these spirals. I'm not sure if it's because I did it with the bamboo pen, which has meant that they're quite sort of blotchy, but I don't really like them with the compressed charcoal either, to be honest. So spirals are a bit too much, but I do like the curved lines. And I definitely like curved lines with these little dots coming off that's sort of representing the seeds on the edges of some of these stems. And I like playing with the proportions of that as well. I've got some little ones and I've got some big ones as well. So that's something else that I want to remember. I didn't like it so much with the leaf shapes, but I'm wondering if that might actually be because this page is quite busy and the leaf shapes are kind of disappearing into it. It's maybe just a bit too much for them. And then the last picture I did for this session was this concentric circles one, or concentric blobs. I think it might have been the other way up, actually. Yes, that looks more like the other way up. Not that it matters too much. I like the sort of charcoal lines. I don't mind the oil pastel here. I think because it's more about it adding colour, which is something that I haven't explored too much at this stage here. But I do quite like the added colour in here. But I do still prefer the sort of thick, thin calligraphic lines that I've made with the charcoal. I like, again, these sort of dots. And again, I've got different proportions with the little tiny dots and then bigger dots. And then these dots that have sort of become that petal shape that I really enjoy. And again, I like the textures created both by the ink going over the top of the oil pastel, but also where ink and water have kind of blended or not blended so much. Like over here, we've got these sort of fuzzinesses. It's like almost like frost patterns around the edges, where the ink has begun to blend into where the water is, but not completely. And I do really like that. So I've got some things that I want to explore some more. And I really want to encourage you to consider what you want to explore more. So you've got the beginnings of an exploration here, and just keep experimenting until you've got a really good list of the things that you like, the things that kind of represent what you're thinking about, represent the season, or represent the change in the seasons, or just feel like that feeling of a hedgerow changing seasons, or the seed heads all sort of coming out in that structural shape that they make. And yeah, just keep exploring. I hope you enjoyed watching that exploration and you feel inspired to have a go yourself. If you want more inspiration for your own art making, you might want to join the Craving Creativity Club membership, which you can find on my website, www.elenastorrett.uk. Here you will find access to blog posts, additional PDF resources, live Zoom sessions, and discounted mentorship if you need it. Just scroll down a little on the website and click on the Craving Creativity Club logo. For the rest of 2025, membership will be free and will remain so for founding members. After that, it will be just £5 per month. Membership also includes access to our private Facebook group where you can stay in touch with me directly. I also send out weekly emails detailing resources that you might need for the week and where you can find all the additional PDFs, blog posts, and this video. And that's all for now. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and let the algorithms know that I'm here. See you again soon.